For showing up while I rearrange the furniture. I'm taking notes here. I want to say, first of all, besides, thank you all for coming here. I really, really appreciate it. Also, I want to say, I realize how lucky I am to be here, because I got to tell you, I am here with well, not all of my favorite toys, but 3 of them anyway. And some of my other toys don't look so glamorous, like those big black cubes. And with you people, and who can ask for anything more? So that song was When We're Thinking About You by George Harrison. We'll talk about that in a second. First of all, I'm the James Barr on the front of the program. Okay. And I'm thinking probably a lot of you might have come here because you like Bach, or you like the Beatles, or you love them like I do. I love both of them. Or maybe the tricky title of the song. She Loves You, yeah, yeah. I'm still, sorry to turn my back on you, I'm still an early Beatles fan. I love Please, Please Me and Love What We Do, and I Want to Hold Your Hand and all that stuff. It's really, okay, so, let's see. Am I on here? No, I'm not on. Need a lot of equipment to play acoustical guitar. Okay, we should be doing one. I hate to say this is a technical glitch, but I mean, oh, sorry. Boy, New York. George had a lot of my great ideas, George Harrison. One of the things that he did was synthesize, I believe, my personal opinion now. All the stories, incidentally, I'm telling you, are out of the Beatles' mouths themselves. I'm paraphrasing the is not me making this stuff up. This is what really happened, according to their point of view. So George wrote a song that, oh God, how do I say this? Well, his wife at the time, Patty Harrison, swore that he wrote it about her. By the time he wrote the song, he'd been exposed to really a lot of Indian philosophy, both Jainism, Hinduism, all the yogi knowledge and that sort of thing. And I think that whatever he did, he sort of incorporated a lot of that stuff into it unconsciously. That's my opinion. However, he has never said anything about this song, so we don't know. However, he, wrote it for Ray Charles. He thought Ray Charles could sing the song that he wrote, which blows my mind because I never associated George Harrison and Ray Charles. You know, it's like Benny Friedan and Storch Nine. So anyway, he wrote this song. George Martin offered this to Joe Cocker. Joe Cocker was ready to do it, and then and I'm saying these names in full faith that you know exactly what I'm talking about. Joe Cocker. If you're 25, you might not know Joe Cocker too well. So anyway, he wrote this, and at the last minute they put it on Abbey Road. And one of my favorite things about this song is that Frank Sinatra recorded it and inserted the word Jack in it. So he went, something in the way she moves, Jack. Remember I was saying about the Beatles were very sensitive and aware of the black movement. Elders Cleaver, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, later on Coretta Scott King, all the great leaders. Paul McCartney had a very interesting observation. And this is in an interview I read that he had given. A lot of the press and a lot of the whole high-profile issues that were going on were Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, et cetera. There were very few black women mentioned, even though they played an incredibly important role, of course, in many things in the 60s during what I call the switchover. I guess it's still going on. And he was so moved that he wrote this song. And I got to tell you, I played this song for a long, long time. I never thought about what it was about because it's like a pretty song. Right? And so when I read this interview, he said that he wrote Blackbird as an inspirational song to black women in America. Spread your wings and learn to fly. All your life you've been waiting for this moment to arise. It's just, oops, excuse me, makes your heart pound, right? So the other part of this, he recorded this alone, incidentally. There was nobody else involved with him. John Lennon was in the next studio over assembling Revolution number 9. 9, 9, 9. Great lyrics, right? So my facetiousness sometimes overcomes me. I'm so sorry. So I was in New York when this song came out, of course, and not of course, but I was. And I was working for a guy who was a good friend of mine. He actually introduced me to the recording business and how to hire musicians and orchestras and how to get scores copied and all this fancy-nancy stuff. His name was Tom Dawes, and we were good friends for a long time. He unfortunately died a few years ago, younger than me. And he was in a group called The Circle. This is really funny. Boy, now rock your brains for this one. He was in a group called The Circle, which had 3 hits. This Circle had Red Rubber Ball, The Summer Sun is Shining Like a Red Rubber Ball. And I used to make fun of that. And wish You Could Be Here and Look Through Any Window. Wish You Could Be Here was a great song. I love it. Anyway, Tommy played bass and he was the lead singer in The Circle. When I was working for him, he was doing commercials in New York, and we did Pan American, and we're American Airlines doing, we did that. Oh, we did all that stuff, right? He used to hire people who were sort of not real big and famous yet, but were kind of famous, and there was a guy named Kenny Rankin. I don't know if anybody, you know him? Yeah. Okay, so Kenny was in the room. Me, Tommy, and this is like another joke. So there were 3 guys in the room, didn't know what they were doing. Kenny and Tommy and Jimmy, right? It's nice to live this long. You can look back on stuff and laugh. So Kenny was enamored. He was head over heels with bossa nova. He just loved his own. Yeah. Just did that to show up to let you know I do more stuff. In case you have a wedding, you want a bossa nova player. Like that's gonna happen. So Kenny had put all these great bossa nova chords to Blackbird. To the song, who would have thought? And he taught it to me. And I didn't play Blackbird for 30 years, right? Because I was doing something else. And so when I play this now, I think of Paul McCartney and the Black Liberation movement in America in the 60s, and also of Kenny. And Kenny also passed away. And this a couple of years ago. So I always think of him when I do this. So here we go. Let's start that. Walking his dog Martha. Martha, my dear, right? So he's out walking Martha. Like 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning with a friend of his. Oh, with Alistair Taylor, the same guy that challenged John Lennon to write a serious song, so John came up with In My Life. Right? So they're walking along, 3 things happened, according to Paul McCartney, to make this song happen. One of them was, he was walking out with Martha and Alistair Cook, and this guy in a bowler hat, came out of nowhere. This is like 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. They were in the right senses. And he said good day to them. Disappeared. Over the hill. Went over the hill. The other thing that Paul wrote, which seems unrelated, was that he read an article. Paul McCartney, that is, read an article in the newspaper around that same time. And this is a true story, too. This is amazing. A hermit in Italy. Who knew that Italians had hermits? Went through the entire duration of World War II and never knew there was a war. He was a hermit. Never knew. So everybody thought that was sort of unusual, and Paul somehow put that together with the guy on the line. This is all very abstract, I know. I don't understand it either, but I'm just telling you the facts. And then the other thing that happened was that Paul McCartney and the Beatles were very involved at that time with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And I don't know if you've ever seen him in person or films of him, but he has a very high voice like this, and he giggles all the time. And his eyes are real bright, right? They look at the pierce around. And a lot of people who are not into yoga or not into the spiritual world or anything like that thought that he was a moron, that he was an idiot, right? He was a fool, right? So Paul put those 3 things together. Go figure, I don't know. I'm going to retune. Fool on the Hill. 1969, and this is, I'm done doing a chronological thing here, but it just so happens, in 1969, George Harrison had been to probably 50 too many meetings with CPAs, 50 too many meetings with lawyers. They all were suing each other. Each one had an individual lawyer. Paul was suing Ringo was suing John was suing Paul was suing, it was insane. In 1969, George had already, for all practical purposes, left the group, as had John Lennon. The next year, Paul would file final divorce papers, not because he was a bad guy, but that's just what everybody just decided. Some people hold that against him, but he just happened to be the responsible one in the group at that time. And George, to celebrate, wrote this great song this is interesting, in Eric Clapton's garden. He was in Eric Clapton's house in his backyard, and he got this song going along, and John Lennon did not play on this song because John Lennon, just a couple of weeks before that, had been in an auto crash that I didn't hear about until 2012. And he was in the hospital, so this was pretty much George's thing. It was recorded over the course of 7 days, and it's my second favorite Beatles song. This is my favorite Beatles song I'm about to play. This is about to take a break. We're about to take a break. But, so where's the spiritual part? You say, was he crazy? Okay, so here's the, well, I just mentioned, sorry. And I knew the world after the Beatles. And the Beatles, and I'm not going to go into it now, but the Beatles influenced the way musical instruments were designed, the way they were made, and the way they were played. They synthesized world music. The Beatles created world music for all practical purposes. Took an Indian, Martha, My Dear, When I'm 64, I mean, all these diverse forms of music, brought them together. Styles of clothes. I remember I lived in New York. In 1967, you could go down to Wall Street and see bond makers, bond market makers and stockbrokers going to work in these big tall buildings in bell-bottoms and flowered shirts. Because the Beatles wore bell-bottoms and flowered shirts. Without belaboring the point, everything that they touched changed everything. Carlin Stockhausen played Beatles music, if you know who he is. He's an electronic music composer. Frank Zappa was tremendously influenced, although he probably would never admit it, by the Beatles. Most jazz musicians have recorded versions of Beatles songs. They're like the umbrella for a lot of stuff. And I don't think it's them individually. It's them as a phenomenon, them as a force that came into our life. So there is no spiritual part of the Beatles, just like there's no spiritual part of a book or a program. It's all spiritual. You look up from the spiritual book and there's the real world. So right now, I think probably some of you might be thinking, when is he going to play it? When is he going to play that song that's on the front of the program? That's what I hear, right? In the Sky with Diamonds. So, can you hear that? Yeah. That's the first try of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. And if you want to sing along, you know the words. Come back after the break. So done. So done.
thought you were shooting video.
I am.
How do you know?
Children. Bach also was a friend of Prince Leopold. So Bach went away one day with Prince Leopold for a few months, a road tour. And when he came back, the woman that he had kissed and said goodbye, seen in a while, the kids he had rubbed on the head probably, he walked through the door and she wasn't there. She had been buried. She had died of an unknown disease and buried. Within 6 months after that, he wrote 3 violin sonatas and 3 violin partitas. And this is the fugue from the that's a tune-up test. This is the fugue from the first violin piece. And I'm sorry that I have to be covered up with music, but unlike the Beatles, I did not grow up with Bach, unfortunately, and I have to read all this stuff. The fugue. Oh, one other thing. I know I set it up, you were saying, boy, I can't wait till he shuts up and starts playing. Listen for this. This fugue is built on a motif. I'll play it again. That's the equivalent to a motif in today's music, like the right? It's a riff. It happens 26 times in this piece. If you can count them, I'll buy you a drink at the Battery Park Book Exchange. But you have to prove it. 1750. And there were wars going on in Europe, the social structure, the habits of people, the alcohol, the mores, the clothes, just amazing. Ah, that's better. So one of the things that I realized back then, and this is why I play Bach like I do today, and usually I like to play a little bit more brash, but I'm being very conservative tonight. Conservative Bach is that back then the musicians, I think, wanted exactly what the musicians wanted today. You know, they wanted, well, back then they wanted a steady income. Now they want outrageous wealth. You know, back then they wanted nice horses that they could depend on. Musicians today want hot cars. Back then they wanted to play to impress the ladies. Today they want to play to impress the ladies. You know, so it's that kind of a thing. And so that's why I play what I do. The way I do and all that. Wendy Lesser, I just have to read you a quote. Wendy Lesser said, who's a critic and a writer and a very well-respected art scholar, in case you're not familiar with her, said great music is, if it's to last, it must change to stay the same. And boy, that is so true, I think, because Bach has gone through so many iterations over the years. If you care enough to study, I mean, most people don't get put on the CD and here's your Brandon Burr concerto, but the history is great. And Pablo Casals resurrected the cello suites, just like other people like Glenn Gould resurrected the keyboard works. Pablo Casals did a great thing. He really discovered the cello suites, practiced them every day of his life. Till he was 92, every day he practiced. And he was a master of what I'm about to say. Last summer, I was down in Savannah, and I had been invited to sit in on an opera workshop. It was led by the legendary Cheryl Mills. I don't know if you know him, but he was baritone with the Metropolitan for a long time. He sang in La Scala all over the world. And so we were sitting talking, and I asked him how he was going to present the class. And he said, well, I'm just going to say what comes to my mind is these young girls, for the most part, would come out and sing. And he said to this one girl something that I heard so many times. I studied with a guy named Dennis Sandoli in Philadelphia. I heard this 100 times. It just rang a bell again. He said, remember, the music is in the air. It's not on the paper. What's on the paper is a map, like a map of the Smoky Mountains. The map of the Smoky Mountains doesn't let you hear the birds in the air, smell the leaves as they rot, put your hand in the earth, or watch the cloud goes by. It just tells you what's sort of generally what the lay of the land is. So when I started to play Bach, that's when I realized that. So back to Pablo Casals. Keeping this cello suite. Is this irritating? No. I'm sorry. The temperature. I watch Sandra Segovia do the same thing. Okay. The first cello suite was the first one that Pablo Casals actually picked up. A lot of times things don't happen in sequence. This one happened in sequence. This is very important because Bach's second wife, Anna Magdalena, who he married 3 months after Maria died, probably at the insistence of his kids and the pressures of the... She was a singer. She was a musician in her own right. She was a very brilliant singer. She copied Bach's music off for him. You know, they have made a big score that they write for orchestras. And he copied off the individual parts to give to the violin player, the clarinet player, whatever. Her handwriting got so much like his that you could barely tell them apart. Still, it takes a scholar, somebody who's really trained, to be able to tell them apart sometimes. I was in New York in the 70s, and a brilliant thing happened. Changed my life about Baroque music. Somebody, I don't know who to this day, I lived on 89th and Broadway, up the street, well down the street was Zabar's, the most important point on the planet Earth. We have the best deli in the universe. But you know, once that's aside, you go uptown, and there was a place called the Symphony Space. The Symphony Space was an abandoned vaudeville house, in disrepair but still functional. It was boarded up for years. Somebody got the brilliant idea to have a Bach day in this whole theater. And here was the rules. If you could read the score, you were welcome to come and play. Unbelievable. Started at 6 o'clock in the morning, went till after midnight. You'd go in there would be little girls this tall with the skinny legs and the big knobby knees with their little tiny half-size violins, sitting next to the woman who was the concert master at the Metropolitan Opera, and everybody in between. It was incredible. Teenage guys there, you know, all kind of awkward with their cellos, and anyway, enough of the descriptors of the denizens of that day. At about 7 o'clock in the morning, this was the first year, the first time it ever happened, I went, and a woman sat down, and everybody knew her, and to this day, I can kick myself. I have no idea what her name was. But everybody else knew who she was. She sat down at this beautiful double-bank harpsichord and did this piece that I'm about to play. She did it with humor. It has a walking bass. She did it with sort of a jazz feel. She had a little lilt in it, and it didn't sound like that stuffy old Baroque music that you know, like a da-da-da-da-da-da. It was like Aretha Franklin playing the harpsichord. I said, this is what I want to do. I want to be her. I want to be like her. So when I play this, I'm not like her. This woman was really great. But I've stolen as much as I'm capable of stealing from her. This is the keyboard concerto, originally in F minor. It's in A for G, and this is for the Bach people. I was going to always say what the BWV. BWV is the catalog number. This is the 1056. Just in case you want to look it up. Largo. A little interesting side, and then we're out of here. It's codified, the keys and the sharps and the flats and how they should be tuned and how they should be played. Because up until then, if we with our ears tuned the way they are now, heard an orchestra back then, they had completely different ideas of what accidentals were. Like right now, E flat is the same as a D sharp for all you technocrats out there. Back then it wasn't, and indeed music wasn't either. But back then there was no standard, so he said, okay, this is a C chord, and that's how it is. Bam, man, that was the end of it, man. That was it. He wanted another little suite. This is the prelude to it. This, to me, is great. It's 48 bars. It's 4 times. It's a blues progression played 4 times, you know. And it's in D, and I'm going to just, without further ado, play this. Okay? After this, we're all going to go, right, to the Battery Park Book Exchange and make merry. It's one of my favorite places. I play at the Battery Park Book Exchange. It's in the Grove Arcade. For those who don't know, it's in the corner of the Grove Arcade. Thomas Wright, who's in the audience tonight, I know where he is, but I'm not going to humiliate him by asking him to stand up and introduce himself. Am I, Thomas? Are you over there? Yeah, but I play there Fridays and Saturday nights when I'm in town, not otherwise engaged. And it's my favorite